Hello and welcome to the Quarter Hour Podcast. Wade Kingsley is away this week and he's actually asked me to guest host this week's Quarter Hour. My name's Liam Renton. I've spent the last 20 years working in Brisbane radio, and Wadio, as we called him back in the day, was my boss in the early 2000s. And his undoubted strength as my PD was his creativity and Wade's ability to empower us as young breakfast radio hosts to be creative, to try new things, see what worked and find out what we were actually good at and to just explore on the air. And nothing's changed. I asked him what he wanted on this week's pod and he said, you choose the guest and interview someone that you admire and find interesting in radio. So I have chosen radio legend Caroline Hutchinson. Caroline spent close to 3 decades dominating Sunshine Coast Brekkie Radio on the mighty Mix FM, well over 5,000 shows, and she left breakfast radio at the end of 2024, only to find herself return to the station that she built as the boss in 2026. So let's hear her story right now. Caroline Hutchinson, welcome to the Quarter Hour Podcast.
Hi, Liam. Thanks for having me.
Take me back. Before the sunny coast, what was your lap of the map? Because I remember you in the 90s. You were a newsreader, weren't you? You were a TV girl.
Yeah, I was a TV girl. Who then became my husband. But John and I were at Afters in 1988. And between 1988 and 1998, where I landed on the Sunshine Coast, we did Bunbury, Geraldton, Shepparton, Albury, Sydney, Sunshine Coast.
Now you did Truck Radio for a while, which is an iconic radio show. Were you doing those out of Sydney studios?
It ended up out of Sydney. We started that. That was launched by B104.9 in Albury, and I started there. I was the first announcer on it. And then they moved it to, Ansett bought it and they moved it to Sydney. So it was out of Sydney studios.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that where you worked with or alongside Doug Mulray?
Yeah, that's right. So we got moved to the ARN studios in Sydney, which happened to be the 2WS studios. And honestly, my love for that man knows no bounds. You can imagine I was in my early 20s. I was doing this overnight show that was being broadcast into Cooper Pedy, I was a nobody of nobodies, and I would be on the overnight show. Then he would turn up because he was an incredibly hard worker, and he just loved to chat, make me feel valuable. He was so kind to me, and I have a great love of Sir Doug.
Front row seat of seeing the master in action.
Oh, absolutely. And he used to love telling stories and making us giggle. He was just such a nice man.
Now, was Sunny Coast the goal, or you just took the job that was on offer?
That is so funny that you asked me that. So we were in Sydney. I was working for Ansett. It was going nowhere for me. Sydney was not knocking on my door. I was doing this show for the regions out of a Sydney studio and being paid like a regional broadcaster. So I was on 40 grand and living in Neutral Bay. So you can imagine how difficult that was. And so we needed out of Sydney, and I had 2 tapes in, one Sunny Coast, one in Deniliquin, and our son was about to start school, and John and I had promised each other the next move, because we'd done those 5 moves in 10 years. The next move was it. He and I both had the luxury of going to the same primary and the same high school, and we were going to offer that to our children. So honestly, one day either side, you could be talking to me in Deniliquin right now, but the Sunny Coast job offer came through first.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can we talk local radio, like in a community like the Sunshine Coast, where you kind of set the tone and the scene? What's the secret to local radio?
The secret to local radio is, it's too basic for me to say this, but it's just being yourself. And that means, I'm about to say something mean about another announcer. This announcer was on a different regional radio station to me, and he said to me that he hates people talking to him in the supermarket. He hates people looking inside his trolley. And I think he used the words to me like he hates being a household name. And I was honestly like, A, calm your farm, mate. You're not a household name. And B, if you don't like people looking in your supermarket trolley and saying to you something like, oh, you shouldn't be eating that, or are you having a party, then you shouldn't be in local radio. And that's what I think about local radio. I think that you are boots and all in this community, or you're not going to be good at it.
You've had to deal with national stories on a local level. Let me remind you of Monday, December 8, 2003. The news reports a boy missing just 10 minutes from your studio. His name was Daniel Morecambe. How do you deal with that?
Look, it was a terrible time. The Morecambe boys were at the same school as my son.
Wow.
And so it was, Gabe was in Bradley's homeroom. So Daniel's twins' homeroom. A terrible time for the coast, and it really didn't get better, and the news has never got better. But look, as all we could do was try to be useful to the family, be really supportive if whatever they wanted in that time, and over the 10 years that it took to find Daniel's body. And the only other thing that we put in place in the very early days was we said, okay, then when this little boy gets found, because we know the news is going to be bad, what's the psychologist? How do we be helpful to families that are going to have to explain this to kids? And so we just had that idea in our head that we needed to be, if we were going to be useful to this community, we needed to know, we needed to be part of the healing that was going to take place when his body was found. Unfortunately, it wasn't found for 10 years. So that became less critical. But that's sort of all I can think was, we just wanted to know what we could do to be helpful.
What about the day that Steve Irwin passed away? His iconic Australia Zoo is so close to where you guys broadcast from. You're friends with the Irwins. How does Sunny Coast Radio take hold of that moment?
Again, that was, and Terry and I have laughed about this. I can tell you exactly where I was. And Dave Dolkin, Dangerous Dave, rang me and he said, I've just heard a report that Steve Irwin's dead. And I said, don't you dare say that. Don't you say that until that's confirmed. And it was about 5 to 3, and I think it was on the 3 o'clock news that National News had it. So he was right. But I was like, we will not break this news to this town. They will find it from a more reliable source, or, a confirmed source than us, because it was the most devastating thing we'd heard.
There was a massive radio promotion called Give Me 5 for Kids, which started on the Central Coast, but I know you guys jumped on board very early. Why were you early adopters? Because you took it, and it became a juggernaut when Mix grabbed it on the sunny coast, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. We, Sunshine Coast loves to give, and so we started it. We started it pretty smart, to be honest. We did the whole smoke and mirrors backstory. So the very first day when we said, yeah, okay, we'll have a go at this Give Me 5, we did, oh my goodness, have you heard the news that, these premature babies, we haven't got a mobile ventilator? And so we did the community outrage. And then we went, okay, then what are we going to do about this Sunshine Coast? So that was how we launched Give Me 5, and it really worked. It became very grassroots. We were looking for 23 grand that first year, and we raised over 60. And then it became slowly but surely, honestly, it was slowly killing me, Give Me 5. But we were about 7 years in, and I was like, because I was the person that was having to drive it every year because, PDs didn't love it, Charity FM, yuck. So I was always having to push to keep it going. And then after, I think it was around about year 7, when I literally thought to myself, I'm not doing this again. Like, if this dies, it dies. It got its own momentum, and suddenly people were coming to us and saying, I want to do this for Give Me 5. Like the community became the driver behind Give Me 5, and that's why the Sunshine Coast is amazing. And
RG Capital took your model and rolled it out nationwide. Were you proud of that? Because you guys started something that became a national promotion for RG Capital stations.
I was really proud of that. I am, and I will. Give Me 5 is the best thing I've ever done, and I really was very proud of that. And I love that everyone always looked to us and wanted to use our model. And every year there'd be a conference call where, we had to say, this is what we think will work for you this year, because it worked for us last year. We were sort of always a bit ahead of the game. And I am. I'm really proud of that.
Let's have some fun. Tell me about the 10-metre billboard on the back of the Mix FM building that served no promotional purpose except for the fact that it looked right in the studio of your competitors at Hot 91. So their Brekkie show basically broadcast to your face every morning. Do tell.
Yes. Yes, look, I had nothing to do with it. That's not my style. I think that's not my style. Your intel is correct. That's all I'm going to say about that.
My next comment was, you don't strike me as a radio warfare gal because you're the first to say nice things on your opposition social media. I see you comment all the time on other shows and you're so positive and so... You don't care about the frequency. You're all working in local media.
Yeah, I do. I do. I am more competitive than you think. Sometimes people would have, over the years when I was on the air, asked me for things like, oh, could you supply this? And I'd be like, yeah, sure. But they would never actually receive that email. There is some smiling assassin in me, but I don't. This is what I think about it, and this is what I thought about that billboard. If the two butchers don't fight each other at the footy on a Saturday, do they? They go, "G'day, how's business?" I don't see why we can't do that.
I used to drive past that billboard and go, smart, clever, well done, Hutch. You've won that one. You're in my head. What's the best advice a PD ever gave you? Stop talking. Please, I think when you should watch your counter, and when you get to about a minute 30, you should be looking for an out. And I know that's really, that's probably against the grain of a lot of incredibly successful shows. I'm sure no one's ever told Kyle to stop talking at a minute 30, but I still think that people should, breaks should be shorter. I worked for a show once where we ran a shot clock on the TV in the studio and it would count down 3 minutes, and once the 3 minutes was up, it'd flash red, so they knew to get out pretty quickly.
Yeah. I don't think that's bad advice. I think it's good advice.
What's the worst advice a PD ever gave you?
Oh, God, so much bad advice. Look, we used to have this PD, this is in Shepparton, so a long time ago, and he used to just abuse the shit out of us. Like, he would just walk in, and I just have this memory of him walking into the studio and saying, I need 110%. I think you've given me 70%. Like, he just be screaming in our faces, and I don't think it made us better.
Doesn't work.
No, that's right.
You left Brekkie Radio almost 30 years on Breakfast at Mix. You had a year off and you've come back this year, and the only way I can describe it is you are now the boss. We used to call it the GM back of the day. What's your title now at the Mighty Mix FM?
The Mighty Mix, I'm at GFL Media now, so Mix and C, and I'm the managing director. And everyone calls me the GM, and that's what I am, but it's just because we have a board. That's why I'm the managing director, because I've got a seat on the board. So but it's just GM. That's what I am. So you literally were in that studio for almost 30 years. You're now in the big office next door. How's it different being back in the building? It's really different, and I really love it. I love, my sister said to me the other day, she's a teacher, always been a teacher. I've always been in radio. And she said to me, how's it going? And I said, well, you could run a school. Like, it's literally, there is nothing that walks in my door that I haven't seen over 30 years. And I love it all. I love knowing what I didn't used to know. I love knowing the numbers. I'm shocked at how interested in the numbers I am. Like, if I hadn't known how much I love the operational side, I reckon I would have done it years ago, Liam. There's always two types of GMs. There's always like a content GM who was a former PD, or a sales GM, and you're content driven. So what does a content boss bring to the table that a sales boss doesn't? Look, you become a sales GM really quickly, because if the numbers aren't right, then none of us have got a job. So I'm shocked at how quickly I have switched my brain. But I think what I bring as a content GM, two things. I expect everyone in this building to listen to every show. I try to give some sort of positive feedback about every show every day, like to show them and others that I listen and I love these two radio stations. And I think that sets me apart from sales GMs. And the other thing is, I think that there has been a couple of things just in the last 8 weeks that I've been here where I've been a bit protective of content, where someone had said we should do this and I said no, because that doesn't, it either doesn't respect how hard it is to actually be on air and the time constraints of being on air, or it's because I just think it's a bad idea. In your professional opinion, how's radio going to look in the next 5 to 10 years? We are going to be the great survivor, and I don't say that because it serves me to say it. Radio is described to me as a slow melting iceberg, and there is an element of that because there are so many platforms that people can be entertained by. But we, on the Sunshine Coast in particular, we are it. We are the premium media product, and people are learning that digital doesn't have the cut through that they were promised, and they will. And A, we're still an extremely profitable business, and B, the people who are okay. Frank Walker, great example, gave up all of his radio last year. It went cold turkey, no radio, and is back radio right around Australia because they lost foot traffic. Yeah. It's because radio works.
Last question. What's your best advice for someone who loves the industry, wants to get into it, wants to get better? You did 20-something years on breakfast radio. You're a survivor. You're a trailblazer. What's your advice?
It is work hard, don't be, there is no room in 2026 for the person who clocks off at 9:05. The community does, like I'm always saying to our announcers, against that digital thing, against TV, against whatever else is out there that we're competing against, do you know what we've got? We've got you. You are in this market. You are known. You are a celebrity of sorts on the Sunshine Coast. You are our ambassadors every day. You're the reason that people tune in, and so you've got to honour that and realise that means that takes hard work.
What do you reckon's better? The lure, the bright lights of the Cap City. Let's just say you get offered a Cap City gig and you have a 3 to 5 year contract, and then they change it up, or longevity in a market where, someone like you or Pricey in Townsville or Louisa Pelizzari in Albury-Wodonga who've been there for 25, 30 years. What's better, longevity or the bright lights?
Right now it feels like longevity because I've built this really beautiful life on the Sunshine Coast that I'm so lucky to have. So that's what I think my answer is. But you know what? Ask Jess Eva, who got that 2-3 year contract and turned it into a TV offshoot.
Yes.
And now she's got her own TV show. So I don't know. It depends who you are.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm glad you stayed in the sunny coast because you were and are amazing. You are one of the best broadcasters I've ever heard in my life.
You are too kind or deluded.
I know how much your listeners adore you. You made a difference to the sunny coast with unbelievable charity work. You set a tone. You held politicians to account. You've actually had an impact, being on air and now in the new role, and I can't wait to see what you do next. Thank you, Caroline Hutchinson, for being our guest on the Quarter Hour podcast.
Look, I was trying to be quick. If I sound belligerent, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just being quick. It's
that 15-minute time limit that Wade gave us. It was all right, mate. We'll do our best. We're at work in radio. What do you think?
We've done it.
Thank you so much. It was so good to hear those stories, and I just adore you. Thank you.
I adore you. All right. See ya.